Welcome back, everybody. So, greatest franchises or series of games. Few people have done this. Really enjoyed them. Thought I'll have a bash at that. Then the more you think about it, the harder this is. So before we crack on, I recently attempted Steve's latest PS1 racing game challenge, obviously on Rage Racer, which is the 12-month anniversary, crazily. Anyway, I thought I'd have another bash, see if I could beat my time from last year. Checked up what it was, had a quick go, thought I'm going to struggle to beat these. Had a few more goes, and I was going to do a video. And I recorded it, but unfortunately when I went back to edit it into a video, unfortunately the picture was all blurred, so the camera wasn't focused properly on the screen. So unfortunately it turned out to be a disaster, and I was going to record it again, but the time I got was I was so pleased with it, there was no way I was going to recreate it, I don't think, because I felt it was as good as I could possibly do. So I'm just going to cram it in here. I'm not going to put the full video in because, like I say, the picture quality is terrible. I'll just put the end and you can see the time, and you know, I'm more than, you know, I'm over the moon with the time. I didn't think it was possible when I first sort of started playing it again and played it last year. I would have said it was impossible, but nevertheless, set on the Japanese console with a Japanese game, so the times aren't the same as the PAL version. Me and Daz, K-Lloyd Gamer, had a good battle on this last year, so my time's probably not relevant to anybody else's, unless anybody else plays with the Japanese version. But anyway, I'll put it in here. Possible to beat this time, whatever this is. I'll tell you, that was the perfect run. Wow, I'll take that. 4:22.834. I don't think that's... I can't go any faster than that. If anybody does, hats off to them. Thanks for watching. So yeah, like 4:22 something, I think it was, or 4:23, something like that. I didn't think it was possible, so I'll never beat that. So that's why I didn't try and do another video. Anyway, the best game series of all time, the G.O.A.T. Like I say, when I first thought about this, oh, easy, I can soon knock that list up. But as others have said, the more you think about this, this is a nightmare. And I mean, that's not... I've thought of so many series and sort of, not genres, you know, series of games that I've thought, oh, that's got to be my top 10. But then you think more and you think, oh no, this one needs to be in. And I mean, that's not really counting modern stuff, which I don't really play. You know, I'm sure there were loads and loads of them, if you're into them, that are amazing. So my focus here is, well, it's all retro really. So I think I'll just run through to start with, before we do the top 10, the ones that all went through my mind that at some point I thought, well, I need to put this in there, but then subsequently others just moved ahead of them. So I'm not going to dwell on them, but I mean, and there'll be stuff here you think, well, he hasn't mentioned so and so, and you're right, there will be stuff here I've not thought about, or perhaps I just don't play it, that should be in here and probably would be in somebody else's list. But anyway, the Contra games, the Wave Race games. Now, I should just say, for me, talking about like franchises or series, there needs to be more than 2 games for me to think of it as like a series or a franchise. You know, if it's just a single game or maybe 2, like a sequel, I don't think you can call that a franchise necessarily. Maybe you do, but for me it needs to be more than 2, I think. So that kind of ruled some out, which Wave Race kind of fell into, because I love Wave Race, both the N64 and the GameCube versions. Great games. I know there's the Game Boy one, which, you know, it's alright, overhead top down race, it's not Wave Race really. So I felt I couldn't include that for that reason. Raiden, I love Raiden, my favourite shooter, and there are obviously multiple sequels, but are they as good as the original Raiden? I'm not sure they are. So as a whole combined series, although there are some great games within it, I didn't feel I could put that in there. Golden Axe, amazing game, you know, and you've got like Revenge of Death Adder, again, fantastic. The Duel on the Saturn, really good. I just couldn't squeeze it in there. Street Fighter, I mean, phenomenal series, been going on forever. Loads of great games, but, you know, I like fighters, I don't love them. So that couldn't go in there for me. Panzer Dragoon, amazing games. The first 2 on the Saturn, phenomenal, loved them. I never played Saga myself. It's never appealed to me. And then the Xbox game, fantastic. The Switch and like PS4 reimagining, brilliant game in my opinion. Couldn't quite squeeze it in there. Virtua Fighter, amazing games, all of them, brilliant. Hadn't got room for it. Excite Bike, Excite Truck, Excite Bots, a fantastic series of games that almost got in there. I was so close with that. They're all fantastic. Not so sure about the N64 one. That's mediocre at best. But the others, really, really good. Pac-Man. So many versions of Pac-Man, and they're all amazing games. I thought when I first thought of Pac-Man, that's got to be in there, but no room. Dead or Alive, amazing, again, fantastic game series. They're all brilliant in my opinion. Hadn't got room for it. Virtua Tennis, phenomenal, what a game. And they're all brilliant, all versions of it, you know, but again, hadn't got room for it in the so-called top 10. And then perhaps 3 that you would probably perhaps think I'm going to put in my top 10, on the basis of being a series and more than 2 games of sort of banging quality, I felt I couldn't put them in my top 10. They are Sega Rally, one of the greatest games ever made, but for me the sequels aren't as good as the original, so it felt wrong for me to put it in my top 10 for series of games. Exactly the same principle for Daytona. Phenomenal. Again, one of the greatest games ever made. And there's been sort of sequels of a sort, you know, enhanced Saturn ports, Dreamcast ports. Obviously you've had Daytona 2 and there's a that Power, is it Power Edition or something? They're all great in their own way, but for me the original Daytona eclipses all the others. Possible exception of 2 obviously, but I've played that a lot less being an arcade only. And then obviously the biggie is Outrun. You're all thinking I've got put Outrun as my number 1 series, but I haven't. I haven't even put it in the top 10. Again, it needs to be more than 2 games in my opinion. And no doubt about it, Outrun is the greatest game of ever that's ever been made, I should say. And Outrun 2 is probably better, if that's not contradictory, which it is. But there's only 2 games. All the sequels and sort of spin-offs like Turbo Outrun, Outrunners, you know, they're not up to par of those first 2 original entries in the series. So again, I didn't feel I could put it in a list of 10 best game franchises. They're my sort of rules, if you like. So that's why I couldn't include any of those what I've just said. So that brings me on to my top 10 game series of all time. Now, this is very subjective, and it might be a different list next week, but it's just a bit of fun, isn't it? I can't remember who started this. I know I've watched retroredsteve, and I've watched Tony Fighter 2 have a crack at it. I'm not sure if I've seen anybody else. I'll put the links in the descriptions to the ones that I know about. I don't know if it started with, was it PJvenom? Not a channel I'm familiar with. Anyway, I'll put the links in the description below to the other videos I know about. So, number 10. I've gone for Mario Kart. Obviously, fantastic games. For me, none of them are as good as the first one. This is by far the best. There's obviously been highlights, and there are now rubbish ones, let's be honest. They're all great. But this is my personal favourite. I think it's phenomenal on the SNES. By far the best version. It's much fairer. It's not got the rubber band mechanics like all the others. I hate that. Let's reward some skill, shall we? So, number 10, we've got Mario Kart. Then at number 9, now this is especially for David, because my pick for number 9 are the Dizzy games. Fantastic. If you don't like Dizzy, there's something wrong with you. In particular, Treasure Island Dizzy is my personal favourite, but they are all excellent. Fantasy World, Magic Land, you can name them all. They're all fantastic games. Pure sort of, well, it was 8-bit, wasn't it, to start with, but progressed to sort of more 16-bit with the Amiga. You know, and then you got Fantastic Dizzy on the it's on the NES, isn't it, on the Mega Drive. Oh, so good. The Dizzy games, just beautiful soundtracks. Oh, what a character, honestly. Dizzy, brilliant. So number 8. The next 2 was sort of, they are quite similar, and I couldn't really separate them. I've gone for House of the Dead at number 8. Again, what an amazing series of games. Obviously comes from the arcade, pure Sega gold. You know, started on the Saturn, then this Dreamcast one is where it sort of hit home to me. It was phenomenal on the Dreamcast. But then all the other later versions, you know, like 3 on the, it was on the Xbox, wasn't it? And, you know, even later versions than that in the arcade. And then you've got the PS3 ones and like the Wii ones, 3 Overkill and what's that other one called? The one on the PS3, can't remember. Don't matter anyway. The ones on the Wii and the PS3, fantastic. Especially the PS3 one. You can play that in 3D. Oh, it is so good. Obviously they've redone it for modern consoles, which looks amazing, but you just haven't got the control of it. It's just not the same without a proper gun. But fantastic games. So in a similar vein, at number 7, I had to put Time Crisis. Again, all fantastic games, and amazing versions on the PlayStation 1 and 2. I just love the pedal mechanic on Time Crisis. That for me elevated it above House of the Dead. You could perhaps argue House of the Dead is a sort of a funkier setting, you know, with a horror sort of theme and zombies and all that kind of thing. But for me, the mechanic of the pedal on Time Crisis elevated it slightly above House of the Dead to me. But I mean, going, you know, I like Virtual Cop just as much. That's amazing as well. But I think pure volume, you know, there were more Time Crisis games, plus the mechanic of the pedal. I had to put Time Crisis above. What an amazing series. It had to be there. So that brings me on to number 6. And we've got the Soul Calibur series. Obviously started life as Soul Edge on the PS1 and the arcade. Soul Blade in the UK. Then it became Soul Calibur on the Dreamcast. And then there's obviously been, what, 6 versions since, or 5 since. We're up to 7. We're up to 6, aren't we? Anyway, I think they're all fantastic. For me, this is the greatest 3D fighter. And particularly the Dreamcast original Soul Calibur, I think is the best version of Soul Calibur. But they're all amazing. So that had to be in there for me. So that brings me on to my top 5. Then at number 5, I thought about this one for quite a bit, and it was kind of in and out. But then the more I thought about it, the more I felt this is a really good series of games, and it's sort of moved on and become something equally brilliant but different to how it started. And we've got Donkey Kong. For me, I like the original Donkey Kong the best. I think it's an amazing game. You know, but I like my single screen old school arcade games, but for me this is one of the best. Absolutely love Donkey Kong. But then you've got the sequels like Donkey Kong Jr., Donkey Kong 3. They're all equally great in their own right. So that was kind of enough to get it in the top 10. But then it obviously progressed to become something else. Like when it got made into Donkey Kong Country on the SNES. I mean, a totally different style of game, but also equally fantastic. So together I thought, this has got to be in my top 10. I've never played much of the sort of 3D variant on the N64 myself to know if that's much good or not, because it don't really appeal to me. But I mean, it's obviously also progressed into 3D, and then there's obviously the brand new one which looks really good on the Switch too. So it could go full, you know, sort of make the full journey, if you like, from original 2D sort of basic arcade platform single screen game to a funky 2D full-on platformer, which then became a sort of HD, really amazing looking platformer, and it may then morph into some amazing 3D game when that Donkey Kong, whatever it's called, Banana something, on the Switch 2 comes out. And fantastic series, and I really like Donkey Kong as a character as well. So number 4, this I felt had to be in there, and we've got F-Zero. Why aren't Nintendo making F-Zero games now? Even if we've got to suffer having a Mario license on it, just, or something, you know, so as they can merchandise it. But for God's sake, get an F-Zero game out. What a game, and what a series. And it's, I mean, the SNES version is by far the best, in my opinion. Perhaps not by far, that's not quite fair. The N64 one's great, and this one is obviously fantastic. The last one, unfortunately, to date. But then the more I thought about it, you know, you've got the Game Boy Advance versions, and they are really, really good as well. And I think there's 3 of them, I think. And so coupled with the 3 Game Boy Advance ones and the 3 sort of mainline ones on the SNES, N64 and Cube, there really ain't a bad game amongst them. They're either fantastic or mind-blowingly brilliant. So F-Zero had to be high up on the list. Number 3. Now, you might say I've cheated a bit with this, and I kind of have, but I put all these games in the same sort of franchise and family, if you like. And we've got Lotus Turbo Challenge. Now this is the original Amiga first game, but then obviously there's 3 of these on the Amiga, 2 and 3 after this. All great games. This one is by far my favourite, but the other 2 are still great. But then they obviously bought it out on the Mega Drive, but then it came out on the SNES really and became Top Gear, or Top Racer in this case, being the Japanese one. But it's essentially Lotus. This Top Gear is essentially Lotus 1 off the Amiga. It gets quite complicated because then Lotus 1 on the Mega Drive is essentially Lotus 2 off the Amiga, and Lotus 3 on the Mega Drive, sorry, Lotus 2 on the Mega Drive is Lotus 3 off the Amiga. I know, but it's the same game. So for me, Lotus Turbo Challenge and Top Gear. But then in later years it's now morphed into Horizon Chase, which again is basically the same game as Lotus Turbo Challenge and Top Gear, but made like with HD graphics for modern consoles. Started life on a mobile phone, which is where I first played it and completed it on mobile, and the best mobile game I've ever played. I don't play that many, but this was brilliant, and it's certainly the only mobile game I've ever completed. But then obviously it was so successful it came out on the Switch and PS4, and now there's a sequel as well, which I'm waiting for a physical for. So as a series of games, although they're not called by the same name, this is so high up on my list. It had to be in the top 3. So what can be better than that, you might think? Well, I think as soon as I started thinking about this list, I felt this was going to be right at the top, and it sort of never moved from there really, and it's Ridge Racer. Now this, obviously, I'm not saying this is a better game than Sega Rally Daytona or Outrun, because for me I prefer Outrun, but as a series, well, this has got to take the prize, because there have been far more games in this series and they are of outstanding quality. For me, I don't really think there's a bad one. You could possibly argue Unbounded. It's got a Ridge Racer name on it, but for me it's not really a Ridge Racer game. So, you know, that's certainly the third in the franchise. But I mean, all of these, they're all just incredible games. The original on the PS1, Revolution. A lot of people don't like this, but I still think it's a great game. And then I think definitely by far the best one is Ridge Racer. Just a phenomenal game. Absolutely love it. And then obviously it's morphed into, you know, the PS2, and again, absolutely amazing. And the Ridge Racer 6 and 7 on the 360 and the PS3, again, fantastic. And then obviously there's been spin-offs. There's been that R-Racing Revolution, which is kind of a Gran Turismo kind of theme to it, which is decent. And then this, which is a Japanese exclusive PS2 game, Critical Velocity, which is more of a mission-based sort of adventure game, if you like, with Ridge Racer style racing. So it's a bit different, but it's quite a decent game, this. So, you know, an interesting entry into the series. But then on top of that, you had Rave Racer in the, you know, the arcade sequel that never got home ported, unfortunately. Really good. I've not played it many times, but it was great when I did. But then on top of that, you've got the mobile handheld versions as well. Ridge Racer on the DS is really not a bad game, I don't think, for what it is. The N64 game is really, really good. It really blew me away how good it was on the N64. So, you know, another fine, and that's like bespoke to the N64. That was kind of made for the N64. Really, really good. Obviously, you've then got it on the 3DS, which obviously brings a whole new sort of aspect to it. Another cracking game. And I've got to say, the PSP version is an absolute stunner. What a game. And then there's a sequel on the PSP as well. The only one I've never got and never had is the Vita version. Because I've never had a Vita. From what I've read, it's not actually supposed to be very good, and it's very light on content. So, you know, I'm probably never going to buy a Vita, so I'll never know. But, you know, for sheer volume of amazing games, which by and large I love all of them, Ridge Racer had to be almost at the top. So, we're at the number 1 slot. What on earth could be better? Plenty, you might think. For me, there was only one thing that could possibly be number 1. And it felt like an absolute no-brainer. And it's Mario. I mean, there are so many games, you know, in the Mario universe. You could all, you know, obviously it's been offshooted into like sports games, golf, baseball, you know, football. There's endless amounts of them. But even if you just count sort of the traditional Mario platformers, it's got to be number 1, hasn't it? You know, it's been going on now for 40 years plus. And by and large, they're all fantastic games. Obviously, you've got the original, which is sort of seminal. You know, I was never a fan of the second one, if I'm honest. I know it wasn't really the second one, but the second one we got, I never felt I liked that very much. And then the third one, obviously, is many people's greatest game ever made. And I mean, it is a fantastic game. And then, obviously, for me, the greatest Mario game ever is Super Mario World. I mean, that's without doubt one of the best games ever made. So, I mean, and that's just kind of one in the series, you know. Obviously, they remade all the 1, 2 and 3 and the original 2 for the SNES. And again, I mean, surely, got to be one of the best compilation games ever made, Mario All-Stars. But then when you moved on from that, you know, although it wasn't particularly my bag, Mario 64, I mean, that sort of decided and showed the world what a 3D platformer was going to be like. And to knock that out the park like they did off the bat, when it's never been done before, even though it's not my bag particularly, I mean, what an achievement. You know, the hits just kept coming, didn't they? And then obviously it moved on to the Cube and, you know, Sunshine. This gets a bit frustrating, I feel, but I still, you know, there's some unique mechanics to it. And it's a really interesting take, I think. And then obviously it moved on to Galaxy, which again, really good games. I'm just not into 3D stuff particularly, especially with the Wii, really, with the controllers. But then you've had like the reimaginings of the original sort of 2D games, where you've had New Super Mario Brothers, which is on, you know, obviously it's on DS, 3DS, Wii U, and it's on the Switch, obviously, and they're all fantastic. And you've got 3D World, you know, which they've redone again with Bowser's Fury, obviously. There's just so many. And then obviously the big one on the Switch is Odyssey, which is really the first, well, it's certainly the 3D Mario game I've played the most, and I really enjoyed this. And again, another unique mechanic with the hat, just like the jetpack on Sunshine. they just keep doing it over and over again. Obviously you've got the new one, Wonder, which I haven't yet played, but even like these spin-off games like Mario versus Donkey Kong, which started on the Game Boy, the Game Boy Advance, sort of puzzle platformers, again really good. And the Paper Mario games, I've only really played the Wii one myself because I'm not into RPGs, but even I found the Wii version really good of Paper Mario. And you've got Mario RPG as well. I think you're struggling to say there's a bad Mario game. So for me, it was an absolute no-brainer. Mario had to be the greatest franchise ever. But let me know what you think anyway. You might think I'm crazy. And my list might change next week if I thought about it again, but it is what it is. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Always good to hear from everybody. And see you soon, all being well. Sayonara.